You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Welcome to the show. It's Wednesday, August 6th, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. It also has to be the 69th anniversary of the first human use of the nuclear bomb. That's right, August 6th, 1945, the United States dropped Fat Man and a couple days later, Little Boy on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, ushering in the nuclear age. And let's hope that we never, ever have to use another nuclear weapon in human history. The devastation from that is still being felt by some of the Japanese people out there. Welcome to the show. On today's show, all sorts of great news for you and great guests if you're interested in legalizing marijuana. First of all, our guest at 1/2 joining us for our Drug War Data Mining segment, we've got Jon Gettman, PhD. He's the researcher who, for the longest time, has been producing great research on the economics of marijuana prohibition, citations that have been used by every marijuana law reformer for the past decade or so. Well, he's involved with a new website called regulatingcannabis.com that is pretty much a clearinghouse for all of the studies and information and data that he is able to mine for us on both the costs of prohibition and the benefits of legalization. We'll talk to Jon at 1/2 and ask him about the plans to legalize marijuana in Oregon, Alaska, and Washington, D.C. That's our big headline for the day in our 420 radio news, is that we have got not decriminalization, legalization is on the ballot in Washington, D.C. The Board of Elections has certified they've collected enough signatures, so now 3 jurisdictions in the United States will be voting on complete marijuana legalization. We'll give you the details on that as well in our Behind the Headlines segment right after the news. Other headlines in today's news include a look at the Oregon state financial estimates for Measure 91, our legalization initiative. We've got a task force in Colorado on food safety basics for marijuana industry professionals taking place in Colorado. The governor in Maine is finally instituting a program for drug testing for welfare recipients. We'll tell you the details on that. In Seattle, there was a robbery of a pot dispensary involving cutting a hole through a wall. And in Arvada, Colorado, a man complains that he was given medicated chocolate bar at the Denver County Fair and was rushed to the hospital. We'll tell you all about that in our 420 radio news right after the first break. Also on the show today, we'll have time for a radical rant. I'm going to give you the top 9.1 reasons to vote yes on Oregon's Measure 91. That's now the name of our legalization initiative, Measure 91. And then we'll take it into hour 2 in Toker Talk Radio, where we're going to lead off with a stupid stoner story out of Florida. Extra stupid there. And we've also got a look at some of the other stories in marijuana news, including a bonus rant for you today. I picked up on a story where they're talking about drug testing 5th graders. That's right. 5th graders. So we'll tell you all about that coming up in hour 2, Toker Talk Radio, where we also take your live calls at 971-533-7111. You can become a part of the voice of the marijuana nation. Thanks for joining us. We're going to also have some Irie Wednesday Daily Toker tunes. Gordon Green will be calling in and giving us a preview of what's happening on Gordon Green's Music Planet tonight at 5 and 8 o'clock Pacific. We're back with the news right after this.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, the world's voice of marijuana legalization.
Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz thinks it's okay for medical marijuana patients to go to federal prison. On May 30th, she voted against an amendment that would respect Florida's new laws and protect Florida's patients. Even though 88% of Florida voters support medical marijuana, why would Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz vote to send patients like this to prison? Is Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz out of touch with Florida?
Drug Truth Network Cultural Baggage, replaying Wednesdays at 11 Pacific.
I don't use marijuana, but as a teacher of 36 years, I can tell you lots of other people use it. I don't believe in prohibition. I don't think it works. Prohibiting it hasn't stopped anybody from getting a hold of it. I would like to see it regulated so that maybe kids can't get a hold of it so easily. I know they get a hold of it now very easily. I support a new approach to marijuana. I support legalizing it. It's with us. It's not going to go away. And if we can get money through the taxation, we can also educate our kids about it. That's why I support it.
It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Priscilla Simon.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. It's your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, August 6, 2014. The Washington, D.C. Board of Elections has certified that the D.C. Cannabis Campaign has submitted enough valid signatures to place legalization on the ballot this November. When passed, district residents will legally be allowed to carry up to 2 ounces of marijuana for personal use. Residents may also cultivate 6 marijuana plants at home, with 3 of those being mature at any time. Residents may also give another adult up to 1 ounce of marijuana. However, there will neither be personal nor commercial sales of marijuana in the district. Sales and use of marijuana paraphernalia and growing equipment will also be made legal. Congress still has the final say over Washington, D.C.'s affairs, and politicians always seem ready to block any marijuana reforms there. Medical marijuana was held up in 1998 through congressional shenanigans, and recent D.C. decriminalization is being threatened by Representative Andy Harris of neighboring Maryland. Washington, D.C. joins Oregon and Alaska on voting for full legalization this election.
Yeah, we told you about that Representative Andy Harris. He's the one who's trying to hold up the D.C. decriminalization, where it's just going to be a $25 fine. And he had some pretty interesting things to say about it. He got in a Twitter battle with the mayor of D.C., actually, and pointed out that if a minor is caught smoking a marijuana joint in Washington, D.C., underage pot smoking, it'd be a $25 fine. But if he's caught smoking a cigarette, it's a $50 fine. So there's actually twice the amount of fine for tobacco as there is for marijuana, which there should be. Tobacco is dangerous and addictive. We should be having some sort of incentive to get people off of tobacco.
Agreed.
We'll tell you more about this Washington, D.C. initiative coming up in our Behind the Headlines segment.
Cool. The Oregon State Financial Estimate Committee has projected between $17 and $40 million in annual revenues from marijuana legalization proposed by Measure 91. The committee, which includes the Secretary of State, Treasurer, and Revenue Director, give a range whose lowest estimate is still $1 million more than the $16 million estimate the Legislative Revenue Office produced in late July. The high range is $1.5 million more than the $38.5 million estimate Econ Northwest produced for the New Approach Oregon. The committee estimates marijuana legalization will cost the state $3.9 million per year. The Oregon Liquor Control Commission estimated that creating a new regulatory system for recreational marijuana would cost the agency $3.8 million by 2017, plus increases in operating expenses by $3.2 million annually. Oregon's Department of Agriculture thinks it will need $100,000 annually for regulation of marijuana-infused foods. The Oregon Health Authority estimated it would spend $200,000 annually on 2 positions for marijuana licensing. And the Oregon State Police told the committee it would need to add 3 detectives and send certain deputies for additional training at a cost of $400,000 annually.
Well, it still seems like a win, right? If it's going to cost the state $3.9 million a year, but it's going to bring in at least $17 million a year, it's a win. Now, you know the prohibitionists are going to try to say, well, the remainder, that other $14 million or however much we would make, is going to be eaten up by lost productivity and absenteeism and illness and stoned mayhem on the freeway. And my God, what about the children? Things that folks here in Oregon know just not to be true. In the state of Oregon, 15.5% of adults aged 21 and older use cannabis on an annual basis. That's right, 15.5%. 11.1% of Oregon adults 21 and older use cannabis on a monthly basis. That's 314,000 of us. And among Oregonians 21 and older who use cannabis 20 or more times a month, hello, there are 108,000 of us. That's 3.8% of Oregon's population. I have to think with hundreds of thousands of us using marijuana on a regular basis, if there were going to be any increased costs or danger to the public, we would have seen them already.
Last week, a Colorado task force unveiled proposed new rules to limit potency levels. And on Wednesday, the National Cannabis Industry Association launched its first Food Safety Basics course specifically for marijuana industry professionals. It is based on a curriculum originally developed by the National Restaurant Association, and participants in Denver will learn about subjects including foodborne illnesses, proper personal hygiene, how to prevent cross-contamination, sanitizing, and more. Pot edibles account for about 2/3 of Colorado's legal marijuana market, the NCIA estimates, and it says isolated cases of production issues and irresponsible use prove the potential benefit of expanding training programs. The first food safety course is taking place on Wednesday, and the responsible selling program will be held on August 19th, the NCIA said, adding that more training dates will be scheduled.
Well, this is great. And reading some background on this, there was one case where they talked about a company, they had to recall some of their bubble hash because they were making bubble hash in a regular old washing machine. They were using a regular washing machine to spin it and, use the water and all that kind of stuff. And, sure, maybe you can run some bleach through the washing machine and maybe it's clean and okay, but I think I'd like to have a little better regulation than that. I'd like to know that the people are using, food grade items, food grade machinery to make these infused items. And the other shocking thing in this to me, Priscilla, was 2/3 of what they sell in legal pot shops is edibles. Wow. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah, I pretty much go to the shops for edibles. They're delicious and they're effective.
I wonder how much of that is because there's no public smoking and no place for people to go smoke. And since it's mostly tourists coming in and they can't fly back with it or anything, or maybe they're buying the edibles because they can fly back with them. I have to think about that a little.
Maine Governor Paul LePage announced Wednesday that the state will soon begin drug testing convicted drug felons who apply for or receive federal welfare benefits. The drug testing was authorized by a law change that passed in 2011 as part of a compromise between Democrats and Republicans, but it was never implemented. Tests will be required of drug felons who receive temporary assistance for needy families, or TANF, a federal program administered as a block grant in each state. If a person tests positive, he or she will have the option to be tested a second time. At any time, an individual can avoid termination of benefits by enrolling in an approved and appropriate substance abuse program. LePage and his Republican allies in the legislature tried to push legislation that would institute random drug testing for all welfare recipients, but were not successful. Currently, 11 states have some sort of drug testing for TANF recipients, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures. The states that have laws either have language that allows testing for recipients if there is a reasonable suspicion that they might be drug users, or make applicants fill out a questionnaire designed to gauge whether they are a drug user. Random drug testing laws have faced constitutional challenges in some states, including Florida, where a law was struck down earlier this year.
Well, you know, folks, how I feel about this drug testing in general, and I think it's even more reprehensible when we're talking about drug testing for TANF benefits. This temporary assistance for needy families, most of the beneficiaries of it are children. Most of the kids that are benefiting from this are kids. So you're talking about taking the food and the rent, the housing and the clothing away from kids to prove some sort of point about drug use. And they're going to limit it here to just the people that have had a drug felony, and they're doing that for constitutional reasons. They know that they can't just have random drug testing for everybody who applies for welfare. The courts are going to strike that down as a violation of the Fourth Amendment. But with this, with drug felons, you have this reasonable suspicion. You can articulate a reasonable suspicion. And it's like they do in some of these other states. They have this questionnaire that they have you fill out that's supposed to gauge whether or not you are a drug user. I think the questionnaire is probably, do you smoke? And if you ask cigarettes, they know you're a drug user. So, no, that's not the test, but just
that's a key indicator, though.
Cigarettes. So there's that, and this is just disgusting when you try to tie welfare benefits. And again, understand that the people that are receiving these TANF benefits, by and large, had been working folks in the past, and by and large had been paying taxes in the past. So you're taking from them a benefit that they've already paid into just because you want to discriminate against them because they're choosing to use marijuana instead of alcohol or tobacco. This is why legalization is so important, even in a state like Maine, where marijuana is decriminalized and medical marijuana is very successful. Legalize everywhere, and then we will equalize everywhere.
Exactly. According to the Seattle Police Department, burglars cut a hole in the side of a Georgetown marijuana dispensary Wednesday morning, stealing $50,000 worth of medical marijuana stored inside. Officers were called to reports of a burglary at 6:50 a.m. The pot dispensaries had a large hole cut into its side and marijuana strewn about inside. The business owner told police it appeared $50,000 worth of pot was gone, and that someone had climbed in from the hole to snatch it. Seattle police were able to recover fingerprints as well as video surveillance footage from the business. They are currently looking for the burglars.
Well, you know, there's nothing lower on this planet than a marijuana ripper, except maybe a bike thief. But they're right up there, number 1 and 2, as far as I'm concerned. And this again highlights the problem Washington's got in its legalization. By taxing it so high and by restricting the supply so much, you've still maintained the black market economics that make it profitable to cut a hole in a wall to try to get dried vegetable matter. Nobody's doing that at the cigar store.
An Arvada man was rushed by ambulance to the hospital on Sunday after he said he consumed a chocolate bar that contained THC at the Denver County Fair's Pot Pavilion. Quote, "They were giving out samples and they made sure to tell us that the samples are just a sample of their chocolate, doesn't have any THC in it, and the guy went so far as to let us know if we came into the store, the ones in the store would taste different," end quote, Richard Jones said. On-site EMTs first attended to the Arvada man before calling him an ambulance. Tests at the hospital revealed he had more than 100 nanograms of THC in his system, or about 20 times the legal driving limit.
Oh, man. Yeah. Now, this sounds to me like it was an accident, right? Sounds like this company wanted to distribute some chocolate bars, and maybe one of their medicated ones made it into the batch and accidentally got to this guy. But I have to question the wisdom of doing that in the first place. I mean, if you're giving out a chocolate bar to these people and then telling them, oh, by the way, this isn't going to taste anything like what you get at our store, what's the point in giving them the chocolate bar? Here's something that's nothing like what we sell. Enjoy it. I mean, you just set yourself up for that risk right there. I guess maybe to try to push the brand or something, or to push the location. But it seems to me that's a really risky move. And, you know, doing a lot of these events, anytime there's some sort of candy or cookies or cake that's laid out, one of the first questions we have is that medicated? Is that medicated? And the people out there when they hear stories like this about somebody getting accidentally dosed at the fair, they're naturally going to think, oh my God, what if that had been my kid? Oh my God, what if that had been me? We don't need stories like this giving us a black eye. So make better, wiser decisions, Colorado.
Yeah, scary.
All right. Hey, it's 4:20 in Colorado and the rest of the Mountain Time Zone. So that means Priscilla has to make her way to a very important Union Local 420 safety meeting. Priscilla, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks. Bye, Mom.
When we come back, we're going to go behind the headlines and take a look at the details of Washington, D.C.'s legalization initiative. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with our Shoutcast stream for all internet-enabled media players. Go to rad-r.us/420shout or just click the Shoutcast icon below the live radio feed at 420.
What the authorities should do is decriminalize pot use. You want to do it in your house, not bother anyone? Fine. Go outside with a joint or a pipe, you pay a fine.
A majority of voters support changing failed marijuana laws. Legalization and decriminalization are mainstream solutions. We are the Marijuana Majority. MarijuanaMajority.com.
Join us for the International Cannabis Business Conference September 13th and 14th in the Portland Ballroom at the Oregon Convention Center. The International Cannabis Business Conference will focus on the emerging cannabis industry in Oregon, the United States, and around the world, putting you in front of the industry's foremost entrepreneurs, political leaders, and attorneys. Also showcasing over 40 cannabis-related industry exhibitors, offering VIP lunches and free nightly networking events. Prepare yourself for America's next great industry.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio. Are you a hypocrite? If you live a closeted cannabis lifestyle, you are. Read about 7 people living a closeted cannabis lifestyle who are on the verge of coming out in The Hypocrites by Mara K. Eaton. Available at areyouahypocrite.net. You can purchase the book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, also available on iTunes. Check out Mara K. Eaton on Facebook as well. Learn more at areyouahypocrite.net.
Welcome back, everybody. 23 and a half after the hour. Time for us to go behind the headlines, where Washington, D.C. joins Oregon and Alaska in a November legalization vote. Washington, D.C.'s Board of Elections has ruled that marijuana legalization activists have collected more than enough signatures to place Initiative 71 on the November ballot. District residents will join Alaskans voting on Ballot Measure 2 and Oregonians voting on Measure 91, marking the first time in American history where back-to-back national elections have featured 3 major marijuana legalization votes. Of course, legalization in Washington and Colorado passed in 2012, while Oregon failed that year. Dr. Malik Burnett, the D.C. policy manager for the Drug Policy Alliance, said, quote, "It is clear from the number of signatures the campaign was able to submit that citizens want a major change in D.C.'s marijuana laws. The policies of prohibition in the district have been born on the backs of people of color for decades. District residents can put an end to this discrimination." End quote. Drug Policy Alliance is reacting to the news by instituting the Legalization Ends Discrimination campaign. Recently, Washington, D.C.'s council voted to decriminalize personal possession of marijuana with just a $25 citation. That response followed reports that in 2010, African Americans comprised 91% of all marijuana arrests, even though white and black use rates are similar, and African Americans represent less than half of the district's population. Major Neil Franklin, the director of law enforcement against prohibition and a retired cop from nearby Baltimore, Maryland, explained that, quote, "The district has one of the country's highest rates of racial disparities in arrest and is right at Congress's doorstep, where more and more political leaders from both sides of the aisle are beginning to follow their constituents in recognizing that drug policy reform is one of the most effective ways to address the problems of our current criminal justice system." End quote. Dr. Burnett added, quote, "Marijuana decriminalization is not enough to end racial disparities in marijuana arrests, as we've seen in D.C. and cities like New York and Chicago." End quote. Dr. Burnett was referring to statistics showing racial minorities still receive the brunt of enforcement actions, even under decriminalization. But Washington, D.C. residents face a legalization hurdle that Oregonians and Alaskans do not. The U.S. Congress, which has final authority over all legislation and budgets in the federal district. When the district voted on medical marijuana back in 1998, former Representative Bob Barr of Georgia infamously included language in an appropriations bill that forbade the D.C. Board of Elections from counting the votes. When courts intervened and required a vote count, they found 69% of the residents voted in favor of medical marijuana. So then, Representative Barr added an amendment that forbade D.C. money to be spent implementing medical marijuana. It took until 2010 for Congress to relent and allow D.C. to run its medical marijuana program. Ironically, after leaving Congress, Bob Barr became a pro-medical marijuana lobbyist for the Marijuana Policy Project. D.C.'s Congresswoman, Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton, has made it clear she will not tolerate such shenanigans this time around. Quote, "We will not let history repeat itself," Delegate Norton said. Republicans tried to prevent D.C. from voting on an initiative in 1998 to legalize medical marijuana, and after voters approved it, blocked its implementation with an appropriations rider for more than 10 years. We are not surprised that Republicans are threatening to again use the power of the federal government to block the will of the voters of a local jurisdiction. Many Republicans abandon their professed support of local control of local affairs when they have an opportunity to bully the residents of the district, who cannot hold them accountable at the ballot box. We have already begun working with our allies to protect the will of D.C. voters." End quote. And good on Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton. And when I say delegate, understand that while she is a congresswoman, she is in the U.S. Congress, she's not allowed to vote. She doesn't get to vote. The people of Washington, D.C. are being taxed without being represented. In fact, that is the motto on the Washington, D.C. license plates: taxation without representation. It's long past time that Washington, D.C. was granted statehood so they get full representation in Congress and prevent the federal Congress from pulling these kind of shenanigans over a district that contains some 600,000 people. And again, a largely African American district. Let's go for full home rule in Washington, D.C. by promoting D.C. statehood. And let's hope that the people of Washington, D.C. do the sensible thing, which I know they will. The support for legalization is very great there in Washington, D.C., and pass this Initiative 71 with us in Oregon and Alaska passing as well, and will legalize from coast to coast. Besides, I can't wait until some of these Congress people have to go to work in a city where marijuana is legal. I wonder if it'll change their mind any. All right, when we come back, we are going to be visiting with Jon Gettman, renowned researcher on marijuana economics, and his new website, regulatingcannabis.com.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with the TuneIn Radio app for all mobile platforms. Go to rad-r.us/420tunein or just click the TuneIn Radio icon below the live radio feed on 420radio.org. The International Cannabis Business Conference takes place September 13th and 14th at the Portland Ballroom in the Oregon Convention Center in Portland, Oregon. Featured speakers include Oregon Senator Floyd Przansky, U.S. Congressman Earl Blumenauer, Daily Dish blogger Andrew Sullivan, author Doug Fine, and Harborside CEO Steve D'Angelo. To learn more, visit our website at internationalcbc.com. The Marijuana Business Association, or MJBA, are proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show. It is the mission of the MJBA to establish integrity and legitimacy, create common market standards, provide market intelligence, and develop best ethical business practices for participants in the emerging legal marijuana industry, including commercial hemp, medical marijuana, and recreational marijuana for adults. Learn more about the Marijuana Business Association and visit mjba.net to join today. That's mjba.net. High Times presents Free Weed from Danny Danko from Brooklyn, New York, replaying Wednesdays at 1 Pacific on 420radio.org. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com. You know Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, we've got Frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs, we've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com and follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter. Arguing for the end of adult marijuana prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It is even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more in this edition of Drug War Data Mining. Welcome back, everybody. 32 and a half after the hour, and joining us for our Drug War Data Mining today, we've got Jon Gettman, PhD, the man behind regulatingcannabis.com and numerous studies on marijuana economics and prohibition. Jon, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you.
So good to be with you, sir. And we talked a little bit about this the last time we'd seen each other out in the field, that you've got this new website, regulatingcannabis.com, and tell folks a little bit about the data they can glean from this website.
Well, right now, the biggest data mine on the site at the moment is a report I have on state-level marijuana arrests and marijuana use. I also have some national data there as well. But in addition to hard data that we think is relevant to the issue of marijuana's legalization, the site is dedicated to exploring the issues about regulation. And let's face it, for a long time, legalizing pot has been about ending arrests, but now it's turning into what kind of regulations do we want? And we think these issues deserve a lot more attention. So we have I have an extensive white paper on the site exploring regulatory issues, and I'll be adding material over time, exploring more about taxes and market access and competitive forces and age limits and driving restrictions and all kinds of data about, basically how to inform the argument about regulating pot.
Now, with respect to that, we've got 2 states already that are providing the first models for pot regulation. And what benefits do you see from them? What have they done right? And what things would you like to see them change?
Well, what they've done right is they've stopped arresting people for possessing marijuana, and they've allowed people to start growing it and selling it for a legal market. After that, the regulatory programs in Colorado and Washington differ greatly. Washington has really decided to restrict market access with a limited number of permits. One of the interesting things in Washington is that they feel like they're only going to be able to capture about 25% of the illegal market, so they've estimated what that is, and they've only given out permits for cultivation for a really limited amount of pot. And interestingly, they haven't been able to get enough produced to really stock stores when they first started to allow sales a few weeks ago. So they're kind of working on the supply and demand issue and balancing those things out. And this kind of frames a problem. I mean, the nice thing about Colorado, they had a jump on this because they had a really good, well-established medical industry, and they decided to kind of grow the recreational access out of that medical industry, allowing people who were already growing marijuana for the medical industry to start growing marijuana for this new recreational industry. Washington had a little bit of a different approach there. But you know what? This is basic economics about supply and demand. And, you know, there's something we've learned in the last 100 years, which is that government doesn't do a very good idea of matching those two things up. We've learned, and a hat tip to our conservative and libertarian friends, that the free market, a competitive market, is the best way to link those two forces up. The best way to decide how much pot is needed here or there is to let the market decide, let people speculate, and let them move around resources based on supply and demand.
Yeah, it seemed odd to me when I was reading those first estimates from Washington State where they said, well, we're going to work to capture 25% of the black market. It seems to me that working to only capture part of a market is going to make the product more expensive and you'll capture less of the market. It seems like a self-defeating proposal.
Well, you know, some people have calculated with the various taxes they have in Washington, they tax it at each level of the distribution chain, that actually there's a scenario in which legal pot could be more expensive than illegal pot. You know, there's a problem here is that the people who are coming up with regulations, they don't talk to marijuana consumers, they don't hear from marijuana consumers, and they kind of feel like the public is stuck with whatever model they decide is best, and that's a problem. And there's a dirty little secret to all of this that they're going to have to come to terms with over time, and they're already kind of noticing this. Colorado's got a much better system set up, but they're still having a black market in Colorado. And here's the dirty little secret I talk about: they can't control production. They can't control production now. They can't control it in a legal market either. If they price marijuana at too high a price, too great a price, then people are going to grow their own, or people are going to grow it and sell it outside the market. That's the issue here. They can't control production. They really can't limit the number of people who grow marijuana. They can limit the number of people with legal licenses to grow marijuana, but if they don't attract people voluntarily to the legal market, there's still going to be another market out there. And that's really the issue here, and that's why a regulatory system based on a free competitive market in the long run is going to be the most successful in not only bringing down prices, but ironically controlling access, because the more people you have in the market, you're going to have a lower price. And you have a lower price, you have less incentive for people to act in the illegal market. Now, bear with me with the reasoning here, but when you have less of an illegal market, you have fewer sales to teenagers. One of the reasons why teens sell pot to each other is to make a profit. So if the government wants to prop the price of marijuana up there so they can make a lot of money on taxes, the result is that they're creating opportunities for illegal sales, and they're creating opportunities for out-of-market sellers who are going to keep selling to kids.
And ironically, part of the reason they give us for wanting to keep the prices artificially high is that supposedly the high price point discourages youth use.
Well, they say that, but we've had high prices for marijuana for most of our lives, and there's a pretty substantial prevalence level to fall into the social science level. The prevalence of teenage marijuana use has been troubling for the last couple of decades, and so they find a way around that high price by selling pot to their friends. There is a big lesson with tobacco use over time, is that as the price of tobacco has gone up, I don't smoke tobacco, so I'm really ignorant as to where it's at right now. But, it is basically doubling the price of a carton of cigarettes over the last decade or so, that the use of tobacco goes down. But, there's a lot of silly commentary out there now comparing marijuana to alcohol and tobacco, and you just have to take into consideration these are vastly different drugs with vastly different usage patterns. And economists say that, well, we need to have taxes that are several 100% of production costs as a way of influencing use. But the taxes they're suggesting for pot are several thousand, tens of thousands of a percent higher than the production cost. If you think that tobacco and marijuana have relatively similar production costs, that is, being a crop that comes out of the ground, well, we tax tobacco a lot and we make it to, $4, $5, $6 for a pack of cigarettes, of 20 cigarettes. We're not talking hundreds of dollars for a package of cigarettes or for a carton of cigarettes. And that's why some of the economic theory about legal pot is just absolutely ridiculous. They think they can keep the price up there at $200-$300 an ounce. They can't control use at that level now. People who want to smoke marijuana, and they afford it at those prices. I think it's really just a cash grab by government to even consider keeping prices that high.
Now, we're speaking again with Jon Gettman, PhD, from regulatingcannabis.com. And, of course, we've got 3 other jurisdictions now voting on legal marijuana: Alaska, Oregon, and Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is not going to have a sales system in its initiative, but maybe it'll get set up later by the council. But in Alaska and Oregon, they're changing the script a little bit in that Colorado and Washington taxed by price and somewhat exorbitantly, which leads the state to want to have high prices to make more taxes. Alaska is proposing $50 an ounce tax by weight, and Oregon's proposing $35 an ounce tax by weight. How do you think taxing by weight will play out?
It's an interesting approach. I generally like the approach in Oregon, especially. I think it's more suited toward a free market approach. Let me just back up something you asked me about the Colorado and Washington. We're going to have different programs in different states, and we're going to be able to see how they work. We already see supply problems in Washington. We already see there's still an illegal market in Colorado. Oregon, for example, has had a chance to look at these programs, how they're set up, and the proposal on the ballot in Oregon has sort of benefited from being able to learn from these earlier frameworks. And so I think Oregon specifically has a really nice proposal put together, and we'll see how that works, and we'll learn something more from Alaska. The D.C. one is especially interesting because, in effect, what it does is that it allows personal cultivation, and I think that's the missing element that the commentators and politicians and people not familiar with marijuana, I think that's a wild card here. They really have to get a grip on personal cultivation. And some people have said, well, we can't allow personal cultivation because there's no way we can control it, and there's no way we can make sure that people pay taxes on it, and there's no way we can control the illegal market if people can just grow marijuana themselves. It's the opposite. If people can grow marijuana themselves, there's a check on commercialization. The price is going to come down even more. But again, they can't prevent personal cultivation now. So the D.C. initiative is kind of an interesting way to kind of isolate out the personal cultivation issue from the market issue. And in terms of watching these experiments, we'll learn more about how that works and how that impacts on the illegal market and how that impacts on availability. I think the great thing about these initiatives in Alaska, Oregon, and in District of Columbia is we're going to learn a lot more about how different regulatory mechanisms actually work, what they accomplish, and what they're leaving out. And I think as more and more states go this route, we get a better idea. And I think in the long run, we're going to learn more and more that a free, open, competitive market really is the best way to go as we observe these partial attempts in progress.
You know, we've got the text of all three initiatives up online, hyperlinked so that you can quickly get from place to place in them. I encourage you to check them out. They're all available at my rad-r.us short link, rad-r.us. And then the three initiatives are OR MJ Text, AK MJ Text, and DC MJ Text. Read the laws for yourself. Learn about legalization. Jon Gettman is with regulatingcannabis.com, a treasure trove of information about regulating cannabis. Jon, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Russ. Anytime. My pleasure.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about one of those legalization initiatives, Measure 91, here in Oregon. Now, I know you young people support legalization. I'm going to tell you 9.1 reasons why your parents should support marijuana legalization right after the break.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with the Ustream video app for Android and iPhone. Go to rad-r.us/420Ustream or just click the Ustream app icon for Android or iPhone below the live radio feed at 420radio.org. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you. In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
Here we go. One big push. Big push. And congratulations. It's a teenager.
Don't even think about going to Kevin's.
It takes one powerful mother to have a teen. Learn how to keep yours safe and stay sane at drugfree.org.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org. New Approach Oregon is a coalition of Oregon citizens who believe that treating marijuana use as a crime has failed, costing taxpayers millions in law enforcement resources. Our approach will regulate, tax, and legalize marijuana for adults in Oregon. We can move Oregon forward and create new revenue for critical services. Visit our website at newapproachoregon.com or our page on Facebook at New Approach Oregon. Thank you.
Can't handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality in general.
Down the centuries, you have slurred the meaning of the words we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everyone. 48 after the hour, and I've got 9.1 reasons your parents should vote yes on Measure 91. Oregon's plan to legalize recreational marijuana has now been formally named Measure 91 by the Oregon Secretary of State's office. It is well known that millennials support marijuana legalization in greater numbers than do baby boomers. The problem is, baby boomers vote and millennials don't. So to build awareness for Oregon's Measure 91, or M91, among the generation that remembers what an encyclopedia is, we present these 9.1 reasons M91 will be a good thing for your parents. Number 1. M91 recognizes the reality that marijuana cultivation, sales, and use are not going anywhere. Your parents are old enough to remember President Nixon declaring all-out war on public enemy number 1, drugs. They remember President Reagan promising a drug-free America. And they remember the first President Bush promising to make room in prisons for all the drug pushers. How'd that work out, folks? M91 is a responsible public policy that moves a never-ending supply of and demand for marijuana into a legal, regulated marketplace. Number 2, M91 is good for the environment. Marijuana growers don't convert residences into indoor grow houses because they want to. Prohibition means they can't farm marijuana under the sun. You don't find many indoor vineyards or tobacco plantations. It's estimated that 9% of all California household electricity is dedicated to indoor marijuana growing, and it's a good bet that Oregon's rate is close to that. M91 helps move marijuana cultivation outdoors, reducing our carbon footprint. Number 3, M91 finally exerts control over marijuana cultivation. Marijuana growers don't plant crops in remote state forest locations because they enjoy the hiking. Again, prohibition forces growers into places we don't want them, where they can do significant damage to wildlife habitat. Under M91, people who want to make money growing lots of marijuana can do so in an inspected, regulated, secure manner like any other farmer, protecting Oregon's beautiful outdoors. Number 4, M91 finally exerts control over marijuana sales. Drug dealers don't check ID, especially when many of the drug dealers are underaged as well. M91 takes marijuana sales off the streets and into secure, adults-only stores that card kids, like the 100% ID compliance found in a recent underage sting in Colorado. M91 also reduces price, increases selection, and guarantees quality in a way that most drug dealers won't be able to compete with. Number 5, M91 raises money for the state without raising your taxes. If your parents don't use cannabis, then M91 is the perfect way to raise money for the state. 11.1% of adults aged 21 and older use cannabis monthly, and we spend your parents' tax dollars futilely writing tickets and arresting people to try to stop them from doing so. Under M91, the state makes $35 on every ounce sold and $5 on every marijuana seedling sold, which is far more than the current $0 the state makes on marijuana. Number 6, M91 directs tax revenues to cops and frees them up to fight real crime. Maybe your parents remember that tragic story last May in Southern Oregon, where a woman calls 911 to report her ex-boyfriend attempting to break into her home. Thanks to police budget cuts, the 911 operator was forced to tell her, quote, "I don't have anybody to send out there. You know, obviously, if he comes inside the residence and assaults you, can you ask him to go away?" End quote. The woman ended up being choked and raped by her ex-boyfriend that night. Under M91, state and local police get more than a third, 35% of the marijuana tax revenue, and they don't have to waste any more time investigating and busting legal marijuana growers, sellers, and users. Number 7, M91 treats marijuana as a personal adult choice, not a crime. Nobody thinks we're encouraging cigarette smoking or irresponsible drinking just because those are legal. Most smokers want to quit, and we provide them many ways to do so. Most drinkers enjoy their buzz without descending into alcoholism, and we provide medical help for those few who do. Under M91, we finally trust adults to handle responsibly a substance far safer than the two legal drugs. Also, we end criminal stigma for the few who have an unhealthy dependence on marijuana and wish to seek medical help, to which M91 directs a quarter of marijuana tax revenues. Number 8. M91 provides a safer recreational alternative to alcohol. Many people enjoy a good beer or wine, maybe even a cocktail to relax and unwind. But as we age, our body's ability to recover from the effects of alcohol begins to decline, and hangovers become more debilitating. Marijuana isn't just smoking dirty joints anymore. From infused edibles to vaporizers, there are clean, classy ways for older adults to enjoy cannabis and avoid hangovers. And number 9, M91 doesn't alter the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act. Perhaps your parents already benefit from the medical use of cannabis. Well, M91's not going to change that. If your parents have a serious medical condition, they can still visit a doctor, get a recommendation, register with the state, grow and possess the same amounts of marijuana they do now, and shop at state licensed dispensaries free from M91's taxes and limitations. However, 9.1, M91 makes medical marijuana available without all that hassle. Maybe your parents don't have a serious condition, but you find them popping acetaminophen like candy for their aches and pains, using sleeping pills to get some rest, or taking prescriptions for depression. Under M91, your parents can try a medicinal salve. They can try an infused edible. They can even try a vapor pen without having to register with the state, visit a doctor, and spend a whole lot of money. These are the 9.1 reasons your parents should vote yes on Initiative 91, and you can find these available for printout on my website at radicalruss.com. They're also up at theweedblog.com. We leave today with a little time filler, an animation entitled The Flower. I think you'll know what they're alluding to. Thanks for joining us. I'm Radical Russ. Stay tuned. We'll be back for Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. We got a stupid stoner story coming up. We've also got another bonus Radical Rant. For Big Island Zane, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.